All right, folks. Here we are with our first PowerPoint for, after the introduction that is, but our first PowerPoint for the 1940s and 50s. We're going to focus on swing music in World War II, encoding the American brand through popular music. Interesting topic. I know some of you want to, work on, oh, my dog's going a little crazy. Some of you want to present in this area, that's fine. I am not getting into a lot of detail. And so if you have overlap with my presentation, just feel free to use my resources. I'm trying to provide names that are a little bit under the surface. And so, use what you can find and tell your story. That's the name of the game here. So for this particular presentation, consider an activity. Can you think of 3 precursors to rock and roll? They can be inventions, they can be styles of music, they can be artists, technology. So as I'm doing these presentations, think about these things. These are good guiding questions. How did swing music become synonymous with the United States brand internationally? Give 2 examples of swing musicians pushing the racial boundaries. What is the story with the birth of BMI, ASCAP's counterpart? And how does early swing differentiate from later swing? All right, swinging out of the Depression. So, the 1920s were a little bit rough. Well, they were good, actually. 1921, the Roaring Twenties, music revenue of $106 million, and then you take less than a tenth of that by the depth of the Great Depression at $9 million. So by the time the Depression was wrapping up and you have the swing movement coming on, you've got a lot of hunger, sort of like right now with people emerging from quarantine, for example. A lot of hunger for good entertainment, certain types of, the social dimension that's been taken away. So during the swing era, from 35 to 45, more than 50% of all records to sell more than 1 million copies. Swing music total revenue about $80 million in 1937 alone. The Music Corporation of America was the primary agency during that time for swing bands. They realized almost 20%, so there's a lot of money to be made. And this agency took quite a bit. Usually that's almost double the amount that an agent should take. Managers at about 15, agencies about 10%. And so the repeal of Prohibition in 1933, so you have alcohol flowing once again, not in a bootlegging, hidden kind of way, but above board. And Roosevelt's New Deal all sort of fostered the good feeling associated with the swing era. So yeah, once again, from 1935 to 1945, swing music records represented 50% of all, any record that sold more than 1 million copies. Swing records were 50% of those, so just to be clear on that. The ambivalence of the mass media. So here's a couple of examples. And so, yeah, the ambivalent sort of evaluation or appraisal. Was this a good thing or a bad thing, right? So now we're getting back to some of the issues of conservative ideology versus liberal ideology, which has really been on display here. The schisms, people taking camps, thinking that politicians have all of the answers, going to one side or the other. And so we can see, back this far that popular music and, once again, the race, racial difference, if you will, foster or contribute to the ambivalence of mass media about, is this a good thing or not? So take for one, on the one hand, so Jay McShann was a piano player, and you'll get a chance to learn a little bit about him in a video I want you guys to watch. Piano player out of, I think, Hot Springs, Arkansas, who was the first to give Charlie Parker his own gig, right? So he hired him as a saxophone player. And he had a stint in the Savoy Ballroom in New York City, and those performances were broadcast live to the troops in Europe. And so those broadcasts to the American, through the Armed Forces Radio Network during the World War II period, those broadcasts became a main way, that international audiences came to know what the United States, what was going on in the United States. And so it sounded like a big party, right? I mean, it's some of the best music of the 20th century. And so you've got informing the idea of what America was all about in terms of a musical brand, American popular music, swing music, primarily African American big band swing. And then, so in the 1930s, there were shows that, radio shows that started to feature recordings instead of dramatic content like plays and readings and things like that. The Make Believe Ballroom, Your Hit Parade, you've got the DJ coming in around that time as well. And so there seems to be, on the radio side, at least, a positive evaluation of swing music, of American popular music in this form. On the side of the press, however, you find different, right, op-ed pieces that served oftentimes political or religious distrust. The Archbishop of Dubuque, Iowa, in 1935, a gentleman by the name of Francis Beckman, referred to the swing music as a cannibalistic rhythm orgy, which is, I think, probably a really good name for a record. If I had to name the correct record, come up with a name for it, CRO is pretty nice. In any case, the press, from some outlets did give voice, to fear of racial integration, which, by all accounts, like we said in the last presentation, music was supporting that. You've got, Benny Goodman hiring Charlie Christian, a black guitar player. You have Harry James, one of the most prominent white trumpet player, big band leader of the 1940s, hiring Ella Fitzgerald to sing with him and to tour together, to travel together. That was, I'm sure they had some pretty incredible stories to tell from those days. So, swing musicians pushing some of these boundaries. Okay, here is, I'm going to play a little bit of this on mute for you. So, cannibalistic rhythm orgy, question mark. So when you look at the dancing here, this is swing music dancing. Some of you may have seen this already. I'm not sure. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. It is a far cry from what you would imagine in an upper crust tea party with classical music playing in the background. And so here you've got, and this movie is called Hell's a Boppin', 1939. So the swing movement is already underway. And so, the jitterbug, the Lindy Hop, some of the dances that became synonymous with swing music were captured here in 1939. This is a year after Robert Johnson, the bluesman, was poisoned and passed away in Mississippi. And that's just for reference in terms of those of you I know who are interested in that. So the sort of wild abandon must have been a bit much for some of the more conservative members of American society to deal with sort of this crazy throwing around of bodies and the rest. But to this day, swing dance competitions persist, and this is a particularly energetic version of swing dancing, but this is a highly crafted, obviously very athletic, and very skilled. I mean, look at the strength there. He's got him upside down. Style of dance. I mean, the camera is having a hard time keeping up with these folks. So yeah, check out that movie. You can, in fact, find that clip on YouTube. And so yeah, this is probably what was, not to mention the sweating and the driving rhythms and the loud noise, and the whole thing was probably just, some parts of conservative white America obviously had nowhere in their brains that this could exist other than some distorted version of a nightmare that they once had. I mean, who knows? And so this is the sort of second chapter to the the minstrel shows, because there was no place in the mind for this experience to exist as a lived experience that was, liberated, yes, energetic, free, fun-loving. None of that made sense when the Archbishop of Dubuque saw stuff like this. So they had to resort to an antiquated, negative box to kind of stuff it into. And this is another example of how mass media, and in this case, the press as a member of what we referred to as the sort of hegemonic structure. So if the school and the church and the radio and the press are all sort of giving versions of the same endorsement and assessment, then that becomes the normal. That becomes what people believe to be the case. And so that's how hegemony works. It's very sort of subtle reinforcement through multiple avenues. And so you can see, obviously, racism being supported in those situations. As I mentioned in the last presentation, the use of cartoons can be a very important way to look at how popular culture is landing or certain events. And so here we have got two cartoons. This is Goopy Gear here on the left. Goopy Gear, to set this up, is a piano player in a like a cabaret dinner theater, but one that is sort of on the down low, so during Prohibition era. So this is 1932. And then You Don't Know What You're Doing is also dance and music themed. So these are black and white cartoons, obviously very sort of sketchily drawn. But it has to do with, a culture of excess and too much drinking. So I'll just kind of pull up a little bit here. We'll get to the end where finally the top blows off of the party. Okay, so he's got his... okay, so it's a stage show. And this singer is being heckled by these guys who are unshaven and toting each one their own bottle of booze. You can't see that here. But they're heckling this guy. And they're really kind of going after each other here. Until, they're booing him and they're saying, "You're no good." And the crowd likes the guys booing the performer. So he's taking bows until he's too drunk and falls out onto drum. And the crowd thinks that's the greatest show ever. Okay, here we go. He's going to finish his bottle here, stumble around, burp on the audience. So this version of popular theater, popular culture and music, is making a star out of whoever's the drunkest one, right? And so here they go, stumbling out of the theater. The guy walks into the light post. He's like, "This looks strong enough. I'm going to put it in my car." The car's like, "That's jet fuel, man." So anyway, they continue to have a drunken, drinking and driving obviously was not too much of a concern here. So that's that cartoon. Goopy Gear, on the other hand, the piano player. Let me get this out a little bit. Okay, so he is also in a dinner theater. And so he's playing there's Goopy right there. He's playing kind of some classical music to start with, and then he moves into ragtime. And then she comes up and tells some jokes. Oh, that's a good one. And then the party breaks out. So this guy's blowing up a balloon. We got streamers going on. The balloon gets out of his hand, goes across the room, and then gives this little lady the business, or this larger lady. She likes it at first, and then gives him what for, knocks him out. And so the fact that, the media, if you will, is cartoon. It takes a while to draw a good cartoon. This was showing between, these cartoons typically were showing between feature films at the movie theater. And so this was the object of entertainment. Probably people laughing at this, thinking, "Oh, that's crazy," but it comes from somewhere, right? And so this culture of excess coming out of Prohibition has been captured in these in these cartoons. And then finally, I think this one also ends in, yeah, he had a little sip there. Too much to drink. The fire coming out of the mouth is pretty awesome in terms of getting the comment. Okay, now he's going to town on the piano, and this horse or whatever has got the box with whenever you got the bottle with 3 X's on it, you know it's serious. All right, looks. So anyway, reinforcing our overall idea here about the kinds of associations that are going on between certain versions of popular culture, of popular song, and then other versions of popular song. Here we've got the white crooning Bing Crosby, very well dressed, with his island party, some of whom are toting saxophones and things. And he comes to call on his beloved. Let me move this up here. Oops, lost my place. So anyway, he starts singing, and he's doing his crooning with his musicians. And as you can see, this is is quite a different image of popular music. We got to see the lady entranced, just like the chickens were in the last shot. There she is. She's like, "What is this music I hear? It's beautiful." Drops paper, is immediately entranced. Sits on the post by mistake. So there you go. That's how the popular icon is being built across different styles of jazz. Now, interesting to me is this idea that the less visible and more stigmatized, so the one with the negative evaluation of excess and drinking, that seems to all be landing on the sort of ragtime and blues and sort of reckless jitterbugging side of the equation. And so because of that, I should say, an interesting exponent of that is this guy Lester Young, who's a saxophone player. And this is an excerpt from a Ken Burns documentary on jazz. And there's one of the chapters called The Velocity of Celebration that I've taken this from. Now, I've put a link to that. You, as a student at USM, can watch these. I mean, it's a 7-part DVD series, but the best one, in my opinion, is the one called The Velocity of Celebration. And so you can pull that up and watch that, and I think you can learn as much or more just watching that one chapter of this documentary series than you can reading several books on the topic, because it's so well researched. I mean, Ken Burns did, Vietnam, did the DVD documentary series on baseball. But in any case, this is this little 1 minute excerpt right here. And once again, I probably shouldn't try to record it or play it, but it's talking about how not only did Lester Young have an interesting style of, his playing was very unique, his tone was super unique, but his style of dress very unique, and he also invented, he had a unique way of talking. And so the narrator is going on to talk about how he would say, instead of "Can your wife cook?" he would say, "Does Madam burn?" Or instead of calling musicians by their name, he would call them Lady this and Lady that. When there was the police in the venue, he would say, "Bob Crosby's in the house." Let me see if I can pick up a little bit of this.
I was arrested one time by some policeman that looked just like Bob Crosby. Lester would walk by you when you're sitting in a booth, and as he went by, he just kind of brushed you with his finger.
Yeah, so
Bob Crosby's in the house.
So he had his a style of talking that became progressively less his own and more a style of talking that was associated to the jazz musicians in the and this is of course in the Kansas City, Missouri area during the late 30s and early 40s. And so as the 40s would go on, this style of speaking became referred to as jive talk, right? And so I have located the Hepcat's Jive Talk Dictionary. And so for this Friday, what I would like for you to do is, I've not only located the Jive Talk Dictionary, I have uploaded the Jive Talk Dictionary to our course. And there it is, the Hepcat Jive Talk Dictionary. And so it is, it's not super long, but it's long enough, 52 pages. Tells you a little bit about Jive Talk. And so what I want you to do for this Friday is to either work alone or with a classmate and make like you are Lester Young. So choose a general topic, like going on vacation, throwing a party, going on a date or whatever, but don't indicate on your quiz what that topic is, because you're going to hide the topic underneath this new language, right? And so you're going to consult the dictionary to find out what some of the words are, like "all read." That means absolutely okay. If you've got a beef, that's a complaint. We still use that one today, as a matter of fact. So it's a lot of fun to go through here. You're fried, it's another way of saying you're drunk. So this is a ton of fun, in my opinion, to kind of talk like a 1940s jazz musician and go through and figure out how to, can you use 150 words of this words from this dictionary and convey that you're going on vacation, which makes complete sense to someone else who knows, who understands the language, right? But would be completely unknown to anybody else. And so that would be someone on the outside of the community. And that community at the time was drawn largely along racial lines, but completely along the lines of the musicians. Like the guy in the interview who's talking about how Lester Young would talk, he was white. He just happened to be in the group, of musicians with him. And so once again, it's less the in and the out of it, the dividing line is less a matter of skin tone and more a matter of, are you good on your instrument and can you, hang with the musicians or not? Are you a good musician? So choose or come up with your own, you got into an accident in your car, or you've got going on a date. I've got that one here, but come up with a general topic and write a dialogue with another classmate, or write a monologue alone if you want to. Per student should be 150 words. And then all you have to do is write your dialogue or your monologue about a topic, but we have to kind of be able to guess. Don't tell what the topic is. All right. So there you go. That is the Swing Music in World War II Encoding the American Brand presentation. I'll see you for the next presentation shortly. Thank you.